Spring turkey hunting in the state of Colorado. This is one of the times that you get a unique opportunity to not only chase a pretty cool animal, but also enjoy some great weather. This is my first spring in a while, obviously, with baseball season consuming my time most springs, but it was a pretty cool experience to get out here and chase some turkey and get to see a really good population and kind of a thriving population.
So the beauty of this spot is that it's been relatively untouched. So for the most part with me playing baseball, I'm not really able to hunt either spring or fall turkey just due to when the season is. So this has been the first time that I've really chased turkeys on this property, and I think it showed because they really weren't as weird as I thought they might be. Basically, after spending a lot of time out here, we realized exactly where the turkeys roosted. We found the trees in the exact location, and then we realized where they'd end up and feed around, I'd say 9 a.m. every single day. So the idea was to set up a path where we would be intercepting them a little bit. We'd have our decoys out, and ideally they'd be kind of trying to push through that area, and we'd be able to catch them on the cross.
So these high-tech graphics is kind of exactly what we're about here. This was just our rough plan, and putting it into an animation made it look kind of funny, but in all reality, it's exactly what we were hoping for. We know where the roost is, we know exactly where to look, and around 6:05 a.m., we started to see kind of exactly what we expected. They came from the roost spot, and they were slowly starting to work their way over towards us, kind of at their own pace and kind of just moving around like nothing was really happening, or there's really no pressure to keep moving for a while.
They stayed right around 100 yards away, and that's when we realized we had to make an adjustment. Obviously, we can't go out there and move the decoys because we'd blow our hide right away, and obviously that would start to spook them as we were pushing towards them to grab the decoys. But we decided to work back about 40 yards. So we left me up there with the gun, and my uncle was able to go back about 40 yards and start calling again further back.
As we watched, it was pretty clear that they just knew something was a little bit up. They couldn't tell exactly what it was, and they weren't going to leave the area, but they were still trying to figure out why something was kind of astray and what was going on in the field. So this idea here was just to kind of give them a little sense of comfort. The calling was going to come from a different direction. Maybe they were going to think it was different birds. Maybe they were just going to be a little more comfortable in their own area.
Maybe that, they could come into that area and kind of take that area over again. So sure enough, about 10 minutes into that, we started to see a change in demeanor from the two toms that we were looking at, and they started to slowly work their way towards us. Once he continued to call further and further back, they started to notice that something was a little different, and they started working towards us, and that's when they noticed the decoys, and they finally did get a little territorial. So the two toms here came right up to the decoys. They were very angry because this is their area, and that the little Jake decoy was invading upon that, and they started to work right in exactly how we wanted.
So as you saw, we started to get a response from the toms, which was nice. They started to kind of acknowledge that we were there. They started to acknowledge that there was kind of some jakes in the area, and that maybe they started to get a little bit territorial. So they started working our way, and as you can see, they started getting a lot closer. This was finally kind of the time when they started to commit. We were working really hard to get them just over to the decoys. They noticed the decoys. They were just kind of steering clear for a while. So this was kind of that final point when we got them to commit. Unfortunately, the camera work is absolutely atrocious, and I'll explain that a little bit better here in a second. But finally, we're getting into the position where we have a chance, and we may be able to capitalize on it. So the most frustrating part of this whole ordeal was that right when they finally started to commit and they were starting to come into the decoys and we were in a good position, my big camera went out. So all the time I spent setting it up on the tripod and making sure that it was in a good spot and it was covered and it was hidden, all that kind of fell apart on me. And so I had to use my handheld bridge camera, which as you can see, there's some issues focusing, mainly because it's just really not designed for this. So it was kind of my first time trying to truly document a hunt, so you live and you learn, but the quality of the video here obviously wasn't great, especially for this situation. We had the toms right where we wanted them and right in the perfect position. So obviously the camera work was not exactly what we were looking for, but I still got a good shot here. And honestly, the flinch is what killed me the most. The focus was fine, but got the job done. Here's your super slow-mo recap, and ended up taking home 2 turkey.
I think this comes as no surprise, but for those of you that are kind of learning and trying to figure out how to turkey hunt, maybe some of the tips and tricks, the biggest thing I can say is that they rely heavily on their sight, and they have incredible eyesight. That's one of the biggest things with turkey. Instead of relying on some of their other senses like big game animals and even ducks with the hearing and whatnot, turkeys are very, very reliant on sight. So hide and cover is a huge part of trying to trick the turkeys, trying to stay hidden, trying to get them to follow your plans and come into your decoys or whatever. So we were really focused early on trying to find a good place to hide. We were trying to find a good place with a lot of cover, and then on top of it, somewhere that didn't look too suspicious in a sense. I know animals in general don't like flirting with boundary lines, flirting with, you know, a flat field and then some rough edges or some tree line. They don't necessarily like to come right around that edge because they start to understand it. So it was a tricky concept trying to find a place that not only gave us good cover but also wasn't too suspicious and didn't fall too far off their path. But we ended up finding a good spot kind of in the trees, tucked away exactly probably 10 or 20 yards south of their path.
Fortunately for us, the more I was looking around and the more we hung out, the more good toms I saw. So that's going to be encouraging for this area going forwards. I know in a normal year, I probably wouldn't be able to do a spring turkey hunt just due to baseball season, but the amount of toms we saw out here was awesome. Even several jakes kind of in the area. So it's a good sign going forward, and I think this is going to be a cool spot for turkey hunting for years to come.
For those of you that are getting into turkey hunting or want to get into turkey hunting, it's definitely a fun adventure. As somebody that usually does big game and waterfowl stuff, it was refreshing this year to be able to hunt some turkey and kind of get that experience. I know they are incredibly smart animals, so it's always a fun chase, and it's kind of a chess match with them sometimes, trying to figure out where the best place is to hide, trying to give them cues to come to you without being too blatantly obvious and letting them realize something's wrong. So throughout this whole hunt, it was kind of a game of cat and mouse, trying to see what would make them commit and what was kind of spooking them off. But eventually we got the job done, and I'm looking forward to next year. I think this property is growing a lot of good toms, and I think long term it's going to be a fun opportunity to hunt some turkey here. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate you guys sticking around. Hopefully we'll be following this up with some big game content here soon, and we'll catch you in the next one.